I had a question come up in the Spotify comments, and admittedly, it's been a few weeks, but I figured maybe I should give the response more publicly for those who don't listen on Spotify and didn't see this whole exchange. The question was whether I use a virtual tabletop or a website, or if I simply am doing this all analog. And the answer, as I said on there, is I am doing this via the virtual tabletop of Foundry. I've had a license for it anyway and have used it for some other things, and I find it really convenient for this sort of thing. It's got a very well-written module for it that just automates a lot. It allows me to just kind of easily keep track of all the reference material. Like, one of the things that it is most helpful for is how quickly I can pull up the moves reference, and everything is kind of hyperlinked between each other, and a lot of things will just happen automatically where like if I got a miss on a roll and that's got a link to a pay the price table, I could just click it there. So it's all done virtually. I do also keep some amount of notes in there. But one of the things that I do still analog-ish is when I make a dice roll in the game, I have a mod so that 3D dice are rolled so that they kind of roll around and take a little while to settle, just to give myself a little bit more suspense between when I click to do an action and when I see the results of it. So that's why there's usually a little bit of a gap that I leave in, just for a similar amount of suspense for y'all before we find out, like, oh, that was a miss, or hey, a strong hit, or, whatever, all the words that I tend to say. Sometimes you might even hear the sound of me clicking my mouse. I admittedly leave that in sometimes just to kind of make it all the more clear. Like, yes, you're hearing, this is the action of when I'm fully making that decision. So anyway, that's the long answer to I use Foundry. A little bit for the note-taking, though I barely take any notes. Mostly to automate the process and have an easy way to refer to all the moves and all the oracles and everything. It's really handy. As far as I can tell, Roll20 probably has a pretty much equivalent one if you want to, if you don't already have a Foundry license and are looking for a free alternative. I highly recommend this virtual version. I find it very handy. Anyway, that's the process that I use. And if anybody else has any more questions about, the show or myself or whatever you're curious about, or really, even if you just have questions about life that have nothing to do with me or this game or anything, if you have a question, I will come up with an answer for it. It's probably not going to be the right answer, but I will come up with an answer, so feel free to drop me a line. You could leave it in the comments of an episode like this one was, though admittedly I don't always see them immediately, and I only really have a convenient way to see comments left on Spotify or YouTube, so if you want the quickest response, I highly recommend starforgedpod@gmail.com. That's the way I'm probably going to see the earliest. Anyway, let's get into the actual show. Stranded in space on a ship crashing into the atmosphere of an unknown planet, Emile Spencer knew that the only way to survive would be by his own wits and guile. He vowed that somehow he would find and slay the titanic cosmic beast that put him in this predicament, VY572. With every installment, we follow Emile's explorations and discoveries on this journey of revenge against all odds. I'm Midnight Jester, and this is the Left Behind Starforged series. Our last episode was the big stealth operation, the Emile's heist. We started with him inside the Imperium carrier, making efforts to make sure they could not blow up his ship that was still connected on the outside. He was able to use his remote flying program, get it installed onto this new ship via its still active connection to the computer system of the carrier, got it to fly away before they were able to find it, used that time and confusion to get inside the hangar, and ultimately install it on all the rest of them under the guise of just being one of the Imperium soldiers. He was in the uniform. He got this remote flying system installed on most of their ships before he felt like he was running out of time, powered them all online, got inside of one of them, and escaped the ship just in time as they were trying to close the doors on him. He was able to jump away to the spot where his ship was waiting, reconvene, and feel like he had finally got an opportunity to rest. He was wrong, of course, because he wound up finding out that the Imperium ships have their own little tracking devices on them so that they can find them in the event that they've been stolen. And moreover, if you try to tamper with them, they will attempt to kill you with a lethal burst of electricity. Emile did survive, pulling his hands away before the worst of that electrical burst that went off when he was tampering with it, but he did have to face the remaining Imperium ships when they found him. Now, through clever use of remote controlling the 18 ships he now had at his disposal, not very well, but at least enough to make a blanket of laser fire to hide in, he was able to one by one take out the remaining Imperium ships before jumping away again. He did not destroy them, but he did disable them, and he jumped away. And thankfully for Emile, where he jumped to was directly in the path of the Beowulf in its flight back to Cinder. Emile saw that the Beowulf had indeed been successful, rendezvousing with Newton's Folly. The two of them were traveling together, and Emile got on the horn and made it clear to them that this was Emile, this was not the Imperium, and they were all friends and could travel together. So that's where we left off. Now, before we get back to that, let's do a little bit of a vignette. Because our momentum is sitting at a +5 right now. Not bad, but could certainly use it to get all the way up to a +6. So I want to explore a little bit more of the vignette we had last time. Because last time we chose to use the vignette to take a look at what was going on with Valkyrie back on Cinder. I think this week's vignette is going to start it's like an alternate angle of that same scene. We see the tail end of it, as Valkyrie is telling Vert and Magpie that Magpie will break before she does. She does not give up the location of Emile. Now, she doesn't know it. Emile doesn't even know his current location, but she doesn't give him up. And we're seeing this all from an alternate angle. Rather than before, where we were inside the room with her, we see that this is all being viewed by a third party from inside the vents. It is not long after Magpie and Vert leave that we see this observer's identity. This is Fern, who is watching along, trying to keep to their own to stay safe. And from this moment, Fern travels through the vents, goes into the kitchen, and is able to steal some food. They return to Valkyrie's holding area and slough through the vent. They try to, but the food that they brought, while not huge, can't quite fit through the grating. And so Fern emerges and has to leave behind the food on the other side of the vent. And Valkyrie reacts to Fern's arrival and stands up and backs up a little bit, not sure what to make of Fern at first. And of course, Fern and Valkyrie do not have any kind of language figured out like Emile does, and have never, not even on the rudimentary level that Emile used to have. Now, Emile's understanding is relatively fluent. We've described it in the past as, it's kind of like Han Solo and Chewbacca. It's not like Emile can speak this visual language that Fern has developed, but Emile can understand it more or less like he's talking to anybody else. Valkyrie doesn't have that. And so it's back down to this very simple kind of communication, as Fern is basically just trying to gesture, is trying to appear non-threatening, as Valkyrie is even probably saying, what do you have in mind, little guy? And Fern had intended to just, reveal the food, but since it couldn't get through, they're instead just, forming a little bit more of a head shape and, a pseudopod kind of head and gesturing towards the vent area. And I think Fern then kind of backs up and, makes sure to not be in the way, and Valkyrie, slowly and tentatively, while keeping an eye on Fern, she's pretty distrustful of them, but, goes up to the vent and is able to see that there's something inside there. But, she can't get at it. But as she gets close, she's able to smell, with a stomach growling, that's food in there. It's probably not the best thing. It's not like a gourmet meal or anything. It's certainly not what Magpie had brought in here previously. But, it's high, it's dense calories. I think of it kind of like an energy bar. It's not gruel or anything like that, but it's relatively simple fare. But when you're as hungry as she is, it's captivating. And so she wants to get at it, but she can't. And she looks at them and goes, "You're trying to help me." I can't get at it. And Fern tries, but fails to communicate, hold on. And instead, from Valkyrie's point of view, it looks like Fern just runs away because Fern, makes a lot of quick gestures and then darts back into the vent and leaves. And Valkyrie at first is I didn't mean, no, come back, wait. And so there's this miscommunication. Valkyrie thinks that she's scared Fern off. But Fern does emerge later and has just like a coin or a piece of just some broken off bit of something that she can use as a tool, something that they could slip through the vent, and leaves that behind. And it's the right size, so Valkyrie is able to use it to undo the screws on the vent cover and is able to get this food. And when she does that, almost ravenously grabs at it and just shoves it down her face, Fern sitting there watching, and afterwards Valkyrie is like, you're Emile's friend, aren't you? What was the net? What did he call you? She like racks her brain, but she can't think of it. Like it was never important enough to her. So she's like, I don't know. I don't think you can tell me, but thank you. If there's more of that coming, this is all going to be a lot easier. And Fern knows enough of like human communication to give like a nod with this sort of pseudopod head. And so she goes, okay, I guess you do understand me. And Fern gives that nod again. Why are you doing this? And Fern tries to think of how to respond to that, but that requires a much more nuanced use of language than just nodding or shaking a head. Like, this isn't a yes or no question. And so Fern like turns these sorts of colors and like uses the old communication system, and very quickly Valkyrie is lost. And so, what stupid of me. Hey, if you're looking to help me, do I have allies out there? And Fern gives the nod again. Do you know who they are? Fern gives the nod again. Yeah, I bet you've been watching all kinds of things from there. Fern gives the nod again. If you really want to help me, I'm going to need those allies and to work with them. Can you find a way to get me in contact? I'm counting on you, little guy. And Fern pauses for a moment, but then nods the head, and then goes back into the vent. Valkyrie replaces the vent cover, and now with this morale boost, she knows she can definitely, she can wait out Magpie. She knows there's help out there, and she knows she's not going to be starving. There's a smile on her face as hope is rekindled. So I'm going to take that +1 momentum. I was thinking about, I want more things to be going on even when Emile's not around. Like, the world keeps moving and changing. I don't want Fern to just be sitting there doing nothing. Like, we have some other characters left behind. Let's have them take action on the world. But now let's get back to the stuff that does involve Emile. So he's there with the Beowulf, with Newton's Folly. They've made their communications. Before I get started with exactly what's going down, I want to know a little bit more about Newton's Folly. I want to roll some oracles. I'm not going to do too much, but there's one thing in particular I want to know, which is I want to know more about the captain of Newton's Folly. I'd love to have a good way to really make it not just also there, but have its own personality and ideally one that's kind of distinct from Tycoon and the way he runs the Beowulf. So I think I want to know a little bit more about who is the captain of Newton's Folly. The one thing we know about the ship itself, well, two things. We know the ship is also heavily armed. I think this one's probably full of missiles and stuff. The Beowulf is characterized by its heavy cannons. I think this one would be characterized by a missile array and probably some heavy armor. But they're both big warships. But the other thing that we know about Newton's Folly is that they don't communicate via the sector net. They're very secretive. So in order to find them, you have to be able to follow a lead. And so I want to know about who is this captain that implements that kind of thing. Somebody who's clearly going to be very careful, but let's find out more about them. They go by the call sign of Bash. Well, isn't that fitting for somebody who runs a big, missile-shooting military ship? So Bash clearly gives me an idea in mind that this is a very straightforward, whereas Tycoon is known for being methodical and careful in the sense of, let's not be too aggressive here. That's how he got his celebrity, was telling everybody to advising caution. I don't think that's Bash's go-to, which is interesting for somebody who is, who runs so silently. They're cautious about some types of things, but I think they're very warmongering. Part of the reason why I think Tycoon would have gone for Bash and Newton's Folly is that while they may be off doing their own thing a lot of the time, I think Newton's Folly doesn't exactly play with the rest of the Vault Hunters all that well necessarily. They're not the most integrated. They're mostly off doing their own thing. But at the same time, they are so warmonger. They are looking to fight the Imperium. I think some people are more into the discovery of the vaults and the mystery of it all and the adventure. People get into this for different reasons. I think it is safe to say that Newton's Folly, the actual vault hunting of it is secondary. They're the ones they want to fight the Imperium. And this is a good opportunity to do so. And so Tycoon knew if anybody's going to help us out on this, we're promising a big fight with the Imperium. If I can find Newton's Folly, they're going to come for it. So anyway, let's find out a little bit more about Bash. We're not going to roll a character roll because he's the captain. His first looks, let's give a couple of those. Weathered and scruffy. Okay, so this is, he's been in the war business for a long time, been through many a battle, and is probably the type of person who looks older than his age. But considering we're doing sci-fi and everything, I'm thinking this is somebody like Colonel Ty from Battlestar Galactica. You know, getting older and getting up there in years, and this is, well, okay, spoilers for Battlestar Galactica vaguely, minor ones, and you've had a long time to check into it at this point, but skip like 15 seconds from where I say now if you don't want any spoilers. All right, ready? Hit it now. This would be post losing the eye, Colonel Ty. Like, he's got that kind of stuff going on. Okay, just giving them some time to catch up. All right. So, yeah. Got a lot, literally scruffies, got a not all that well-grown in beard. Let's indeed have them have, you know, the white hair and receding hairline and everything. I don't think they'd be covered in scars exactly because, you know, this is space combat. He wasn't... His ship is never, like, blown up or anything. But he may have some burns on his face or something from a time where, like, there was a fire that was started that needed to be put out. Like, he's seen combat. And yeah, let's go with that. Like, some pretty heavy burn marks. Like, he wears as a sign of honor. Like, he does not try and conceal them at all. Bash, like, that is what this has all been about. Revealed character aspect. Just so that I know, like, this is nothing Emile would immediately know, but connected. I'm going to interpret that as having connections outside of the Vault Hunters. Like maybe this operation had some outside funding from some other key players in the galaxy that may want the Imperium to be taken down a notch. We've discussed this in the past, and while I don't immediately remember the name of this other faction that I came up with in relation to that one planet that had a spy, all kinds of things. I'd have to look back through some stuff that I don't feel like doing to find these names, but we know that there was that other faction that is like looking to take the Imperium down a peg as kind of a, like, they've got long plans, and perhaps they've got some connections to this Newton's Folly, and they've made some deals and have helped make this operation happen. So yeah, nothing Emile would know about, but good to know. And how about an initial disposition? Like, how does he take to this how would he take to Emile, a person he's never met before, and who's got certainly a checkered past as far as the Vault Hunters are concerned? I actually rolled helpful on that. Maybe... Okay, so that's interesting to me. We did talk about how Newton's Folly, they're not exactly like gung-ho on playing with others well. Like, I don't know that they care the most about the idea of, like, an enemy of the Vault Hunters. Like, they don't give a shit. Their enemies are the big enemies, the Imperium. They don't truck with this whole concept of people who've, you know, been shunned by the Vault Hunters. It's too small potatoes for them. They have their sights set on the big fish. And so I think the reason why he's full on helpful is we talked about how Emile's come over, that maybe there's like a private dinner between him and Tycoon and like a chance to meet Bash. And they're all here, maybe a few others, like people that have prominent roles on the ships that are here, but it's a big, like, they're at a long table, just having some good food together. I think this would be on the Beowulf, because Tycoon seems more like the person that would have that kind of a setup, whereas I feel like Bash is more like, we eat in the galley, like everybody just has cafeteria style, like we get our chow down and then we move on. It's far more Spartan in every sense of the word. But Tycoon has, yeah, it's the full-on, it's a spread on a table. He's put some resources into having some actual food and some wine and all kinds of stuff, and they're getting to know each other. And Emile has told the tale of what he's been through and all the things he's done and how he got these ships. And as far as Bash is concerned, like, it doesn't matter what else Emile has done or how many people died to a bomb that he made. He has made actual immediate strides towards taking down the Imperium, and that's worth it all to him. I'm telling you, Tycoon, this son of a bitch right here, he's the one who's going to win us this war. He has done some very important things, I will not deny that. And if the two of you are interested in continuing this war with the Imperium,
Those are your own choices. However, I do hope that this is merely one big battle, and from there, Concord can go back to putting our focus in other areas.
I say let 'em come. Send the whole damn military, we'll take 'em out. When are we ever gonna get a better opportunity than this? You know? Our 2 gunships, 18 of their own, a fortified planet where we've got a giant blast door, as you've described. This is when it's all gonna go down. Let them come. Hell, I bet there's even some non-Vault hunters that would get in on this action. Anybody who thinks we got a chance to actually make a dent in the Imperium.
And Emile I think finally chimes in a little bit and says, "Now I'm sure the loss of all these ships definitely put a damper on their arrival, but that being said, I feel like the top priority right now is just getting back to Cinder in time."
Yes. Yes, we will absolutely be making all the haste we can. Once our jump engines are back online, we will be leaving immediately. Emile, I assume you would like to join our fleet, going to the same destinations.
Absolutely. You don't know how vulnerable I've been out there. Being able to have your protection would be incredible.
Well, it doesn't sound like you really need it as capable as you are, but yeah, you got the protection. How many'd you get again?
18 ships. And I want to roll to find out, yeah, these are big warships, but I don't think either of them has necessarily prioritized big hangars because they just themselves are very combat capable. I want to find out, between Beowulf and Newton's Folly, how many can be taken aboard, or are these going to continue being piloted from outside just as part of a big fleet? So let's see. We're going to ask the Oracle here, and I'm going to go ship by ship and say that it is almost certain that Newton's Folly can take on one of the ships. Yep. It is likely that they can take on, let's say, 3 of them. Yes. It's a 50-50 that they can take on, let's keep tripling like that. Let's go up to 9. That they can take 9 of them. Yes. They can take 9 of them. So then it's unlikely, but can they take the full 18? Let's double it. No, they can't take the full 18. Okay, so we'll say they can take 9, and then let's do the same thing with Tycoon. It's a very similar kind of ship, so it's almost certain they can take 1. Yes. It's likely they can take 3. Yes. It's a 50-50 that they can take 9. No. Okay, so 12 of the 18 could be kept aboard, but another 6 of them would have to be out in space. Or I guess 5 of them, because we know that Emile has a ship. Raya's Promise can hold 1 of them. So we got 5 that are going to be outside. But they discussed the logistics of this all. Certainly Bash says,
well, we got plenty of eager beavers aboard just ready to fly whatever's out there and get into the fight, so we can at least make sure that they're piloted. Yeah, they may not know exactly how all the controls work, but I'm sure they're going to get there soon enough. You were able to fly them, so...
Yeah, it's nothing too different.
Might I suggest...
And Tycoon tries to do this, diplomatically. Bash is useful to him, but he's not exactly the biggest fan. There's definitely friction between them. And Tycoon does not love how much this, everything is shifting over to Bash right now. He's going to be taking on a lot of the ships. He's going to be piloting the ones that are remaining, or at least his crew is. They've not exactly played well with the rest of the Vault Hunters before, so, Tycoon is not a big fan of all of this. Especially because he's never been the biggest fan of Emile either, and they're all getting along. So he's going to push back and say,
in case there is anything that happens to one of our ships, or if for some unpredictable reason we have to part ways and go separately, perhaps it would make more sense for some of the ships to be piloted by your people and some of them to be piloted by mine, just as a precautionary measure.
And I think Bash, I don't think he's that smart. He's tactical. He has a certain kind of smarts. Battlefield smarts are plenty. He knows how to do that. But his social smarts is picking up on subtext stuff. I don't think he's that strong at it. So I think Tycoon is able to get that through without offending him or anything. And he's happy as shit right now still to have an opportunity to go to war. So he's just like,
Yeah, all right. A good way to not put all the eggs in one basket, I suppose. How many were you thinking?
and Tycoon says,
Well, I was thinking we might make it a little more equitable. If you have 9 of the ships aboard yours, and we only have room for 3, and there are 5 outside, well, perhaps it should be all 5 of them are crewed by my people. That way we have 9 and 8, and of course Emile still has his 1. It's more of an even split between it all.
and I guess the question is, does Emile have any thoughts on this? Does he want to interfere and help one side or the other in this? Because I think that's the lens through which we should see this. And Emile, I think he's pulled in 2 directions a little bit, because on the one hand, he has more of an existing relationship with Tycoon, and while he certainly knows that Tycoon isn't his biggest fan, there's a little bit of the devil you know. On the other hand, it seems like this devil he doesn't know is like really a big fan of his, and things have gone south with him and Tycoon before, where the relationship dynamic really changed. So how does he want to come down on this? I think he is going to use this opportunity to try and push Tycoon's side of this, because he's hoping that maybe by taking Tycoon's side, he can improve this relationship and still not sour this newfound relationship he has with Bash too much. Just be like, yeah, I feel like tactically that is the best call. So why don't we do this through the lens of a compel move? Because we'll say that perhaps this kind of split, we need a little bit more oomph for Bash to be on board, because he wants his men out flying right now. He wants to get into the action, right? So it's like, it's a small deal, but he needs a little bit of a push. So Emile's going to try and charm and kind of reason through in a way that this is the right call. And the other reason this is a charm move, why we're using Heart, is that he's really trying to kind of charm Tycoon by doing this. By helping his side of the argument win, he wants his relationship with Tycoon to improve. So anyhow, let's roll that compel move. We've got Heart, and how does this go? Okay, we have a weak hit that I could turn into a strong hit by burning momentum. Of course, even on a weak hit, we'll take the 1 momentum, and it's just that there's just a complication that we have to keep in mind. And I don't think this is worth me burning momentum for this. I don't know that I care that much about it. So we take our 1 momentum, but what is the complication? There's a counter offer. Perhaps... Okay. I think he's going to think a little bit ahead on this. The counteroffer is not related directly to the split, but he mulls over a little bit this idea of, who's in control, right? Because, he's not stupid. And Bash says back, well, to a degree, it doesn't even really matter who reports to whom when all of these ships are in control of Emile over there. You got that software on them that lets them fly autonomously, and let me tell you, man, if that starts kicking in at an unexpected time, my pilots, they're not going to want to be dealing with that. So I'm happy to take the 9 into the hangar. However, I don't really trust that kind of outside radio control, and we tend to like things to go a little bit more, by your own bootstraps over here. No computers, and certainly limited kinds of comms. I don't want them radio signals going about when your computer decides that it misses the connection or whatever the hell happens with you techies. So if they're going aboard my ship, I want you to take that shit off of there. Delete it all. These ships are going to fly by pilot instinct alone. What you 2 do with the rest of them, well, that's your own business. And I think Emile would agree to that. And I don't know that I don't think there's really a role involved. I think that's simple enough. It's really more just the narrative thing that Emile now understands that, Bash can do whatever he wants with these ships. Emile will not have an immediate opportunity to remote fly them if for some reason that relationship sours. But they pull that off, we zoom out a little bit and not go moment by moment as they get to know each other a little bit more, and we have a little bit of an opportunity before they're able to jump again. And we know that the Beowulf is, it's a crewed ship. Like it has a crew is what I mean. It's not crude. But they've got a lot of people at different stations and stuff. It's well set up. It has more amenities than Emile has been used to lately. And I think some of those people may well actually know a thing or two about medicine. And Emile's pretty beat up. His health is 0 right now. He's wounded. he got rather messed up from that electrical blast. So before we move on anywhere else, I think being aboard the Beowulf, he will have the opportunity to have somebody take a look at him. So this is the heal move, when we receive medical care or provide treatment. This would be receiving treatment from someone who's not an ally, which is just that's just an iron move. Not our best thing. Emile does not know this person very well. We do have high momentum, this may be a decent use of it. But anyway, somebody's dealing with his burns and shit, and just otherwise his injuries. His nutrition probably hasn't been wonderful yet, so they're gonna get him on like the various little, like a banana bag of nutrients and stuff. Whatever. They've got some resources here to help him out. Let's make that roll. So we're just doing iron, which I suppose technically, since it's, I could also do it as mend your own wounds, which would be iron or wits, whichever is lower, which would still be an iron move. I do think Emile would be getting it from somebody else, though. Like, fictionally, it makes more sense for, if you don't have to not mend your own wounds. So anyhow, let's roll iron. Okay, we have a miss that I could turn into a weak hit if I burn that momentum. Just barely, because we rolled pretty well, but the challenge dice came to play as well. They were an 8 and a 6. With our 7 momentum, we could make this into a weak hit, which is probably good, because I don't want the aid to be ineffective and the situation to worsen. So let's burn all this momentum. Emile, like, the person just they don't have good bedside manner. Emile doesn't trust him very well. Like, it probably stings a lot what they're doing to Emile's skin. He's not sitting very still, and like he just doesn't have the iron to just sit there and take it. So the treatment is only so effective. But because we have a weak hit, we are wounded, so we get to clear the impact and get 2 health. So we're no longer full on wounded. Our health is back up to 2. However, the recovery costs extra time or resources, so I either lose 2 momentum, which, because we had to burn it before the move went off, our momentum is currently at +1, so this would bring us down to a -1 momentum. Or sacrifice resources -2, which would take all of our supply. And in this case, like, our supply is only at 1. I don't want to trade the 1 impact for the other and go completely unprepared. Like, they wouldn't use all their best stuff on Emile anyway. So I think this is just this is a momentum loss. This doesn't make a meaningful impact on our supplies, but we are, like, Emile is feeling it for a little while. That's why his momentum is down to -1. The treatment that he has, like, it's going to help his skin, but yeah, it stings really badly. It like irritates the skin afterwards, as we're going to say that this, like, whatever ointment they put on to help with all these burns, it's really good at reversing the damage, but it's done in a way that, like, your skin is, like, the process that this uses to regenerate skin is a very irritating one, where it's like you have a constant itch, as there's just this sensation that you can't really fully dismiss in your mind of the skin itself, like, cells dying and reforming in better ways. And it's like, it's really good at getting rid of, like, he's probably got a pretty gnarly electrical scar, and it should take care of that so he doesn't have that anymore. But the process of getting there is just, it throws you off your game, because it's like having an itch you just can't get rid of. A minor one, but it's always there. But anyway, Emile is now healed, and it's probably getting to be time where they can actually jump away again. And so everybody coordinates their efforts. They figured out their flight plan of where they're going. I think one of the big changes is that the Beowulf and Newton's Folly, like, they do know where they're going. They know where they are. They're not lost. Now, it's still a big journey to get back. It's going to be a lot of jumps and stuff. You know, I'm not just going to get rid of the fact that we have a formidable journey back to Cinder just because of the distance. I could see the argument for changing it midway to dangerous, just because now we actually know where we're going, so each bit of progress would get us closer. And while it's not explicitly by the rules to do this, I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to forego the bigger reward. Granted, right now all I need is 1 tick on my discoveries track, and I'll get another box full, so it'll be fine either way. I'm going to forego the bigger reward for just the narrative. It makes sense that we now have a better idea where we're going, so each waypoint gets us closer. We're only 3 boxes in right now, but let's undertake an expedition. I think still the priority here is going to be moving at speed. We're definitely not keeping under the radar, as we have all these ships that are being tracked. And now that we have these ships that are so defensible, I don't think there'd be the same need to stay vigilant. And Emile's less in control, so, like, his own wits have less to do with this. They're just trying to move quickly. They need to get there in time. So anyhow, hopefully this -1 momentum doesn't screw me over, and hopefully we can bring it up soon. So rolling at the edge, and we get... Alright, it's a full-on miss. Once again, I rolled well, but the challenge dice rolled better, an 8 and a 9. So we are waylaid by a crisis, or arrive at a waypoint to confront an immediate hardship or threat. Do not mark progress, and pay the price. Okay, so I have an idea on this. I think the price that we should pay... I think that the Imperium is going to pivot and decide, you know what? We're not waiting on these ships anymore. Like, the word got back that it's just been a fuckfest. They don't have the ships, but they determine they don't need them. You know, like, they're going to just they're just going to come in. They're going to try and bomb the shit out of Concord from the air. They eventually try and storm it, but, like, they're just incoming. And I think we find this out when, you know, they're trying to get there as quickly as possible, and word comes in, like they finally get a message. Beowulf gets a message because they are looking at the sector net. And we finally get an update that says, they're too late. The Imperium arrived. Perhaps this is when we find out that the vignette from the beginning of the episode, that was not concurrent with this at all. That's from back in the past. All this stuff involving Magpie and Valkyrie and trying to withstand and hold out for Emile to come back. Yeah, that happened earlier. That was days ago. The Imperium finally arrives and they begin bombing it. So I'm actually going to make a new clock now. We're going to, like, it's not just about their arrival, but this is going to be a siege clock. And I think this one is only going to have the 4 segments. The Imperium gets there. They start their bombing campaign. And I'm going to say that they've already filled in the first of these 4 segments on just the sieging of Concord. You know, Concord is staying inside, doing their best. Like, they're underground, they've got the big door in the way, but they're holed up now. And that door's not going to last forever. And certainly the colony is not going to last forever. It has begun. And so there's this dismal moment of the recognition that they're too late. And I think that in addition to filling in that clock, I think that is going to be some mental strain, shock, or despair. Let's endure some stress over that. I think it's just going to be the one stress because it's not like they're all dead. They didn't find that out. But Emile does know that it's taken too long. So it's just going to be a -1 spirit. So this brings us down to 3. And I'm going to try and endure that. See if we can shake it off. And we get a weak hit. We're not shaken, so we could lose 1 more momentum to get that spirit back, but that would put us all the way down at -2, and I don't know that I'm good with that move. I think I'll just accept the 3 spirit, and also accept that, like, I like that Emile's not able to just full-on shake it off. And so they sit there, it interrupts the process as they get this news, and everybody's looking like they've already failed. And it's Bash that actually is the one that gets back on the comms, which is very atypical for him. Like Newton's Folly doesn't do a lot of communications. But Bash actually is the one who gets online and says, "This changes nothing except making the fire under our ass that little bit bigger. There's no use sitting around moping. Let's get our asses over there. Let's intercept. We're the cavalry, gentlemen. Let's save them." And that is indeed a good reminder for everybody. Like, yeah. We haven't failed yet, but if we sit here being dour, we will. And so it's time to be faster. Now, I want to think, like, maybe we can find a way to divert more power to the engines or something, like make bigger jumps, like as a way to, like, secure an advantage. How can we do this faster? Can we indeed? Yeah. Well, let's say it's just as simple as that. Emile proposes a way by which they could take a little bit more of riskier jumps and, importantly, divert power to the jump engine so that they can go on for longer and like taking them away from certain other ancillary systems during the jumps. Like it's basically a throttling system where they power down a lot of other things during the jump itself and then immediately turn them back on during the part where they're... Or no, maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's like during the jumps happen as usual, but he's trying to cut down the time between jumps to, like, turn down ancillary systems so that the jump engines can recharge quicker and they can get onto it. So they'll be more vulnerable when they get to places because they'll have to turn down some amount of the power to the shields and things like that and be more of sitting ducks, though very weaponized sitting ducks. You know, sitting ducks are the whole fleet. but then they'll be able to jump quicker. And he puts this out as like, it's only going to work if we all do it. Otherwise, like, we're only as quick as the slowest one of us. But if we all do this, we can speed up this process considerably. We can get there in time. And so I think this is going to be a secure advantage, honestly, with his heart. It's not about the technical specifications of figuring it out. This is about his command ability to take control of the situation and get them to go along with his good idea. Or, well, risky idea, I suppose, but his idea. So we're going to roll with heart, a secure advantage, and this time we get... Oh, hell yeah. Strong hit with a match. I rolled 6, 6, and 6, so take that. So a double 6 match. Not only do we get 2 momentum from the move, we get a 1 on our next move, and we need the benefits of a double 6 match. That's got to be good. Like, I've tried to really make sure to scale matches with the degree of the dice, and it's hard to get strong hit matches that are much bigger than this. We're on the upper end, so we need a really good thing to happen. Okay, I'll admit, it took me longer to come up with, like, what's a really good thing that could happen than I usually take for, like, what's a really bad thing that could happen in this moment. I cut out the big gap of me trying to figure out what it would be. How do I be really nice to myself? But I think I finally have something. So Emile discusses this plan with everybody, and of course, word has gotten around the various ships of the fact that Emile Spencer is here, and maybe his voice is even heard. And over the course of all this discussion of what they should do and how they should approach it, I recalled that, when the Beowulf left Cinder, we determined which crew members were going where. And we've not heard from Dash in a long time. Dash was on the Beowulf. And so at some point when Emile is still on the Beowulf and hasn't left yet, we'll say that the message came in during that time when they were all having their dinner together before Emile had made it back to his own ship. While Emile is on his way back, there's a cold, firm hand on his shoulder, and he doesn't have any idea what to make of it at first, turns very defensively, and then sees this very tall, very rudimentary mechanical being, and his eyes widen as he realizes, Ironsides. And then off to the side, we see that Dash is indeed there with a beaming smile and says,
Yes, you were right. It was absolutely the galvanic crabulator that needed replacement.
Or, whatever the hell thing that Emile had recommended.
Once we were able to fabricate a new part, which, admittedly, I may well have made use of the workshop that you left behind here. Once I was able to fabricate that, a lot of the rest of it came back together with ease, and well, now Ironsides is... Well, I don't know. Why don't you speak for yourself? How are you feeling?
I am feeling quite well once again. I am led to believe that some of your guidance is responsible for me being back in nominal condition. I wish to thank you for it.
Yes, I do as well.
And the cold steel hand on Emile's shoulder gives like a little bit of a, it's like pat, and then he removes it.
Yes, I can't thank you enough for helping me save my life's work. I was actually thinking that, well, for the time being, the Beowulf has plenty of members on it, whereas Raya's Promise, and it just has the U. It must be pretty lonely over there, and even a ship of that size could probably use some extra hands. What do you say? Would you like my help and the help of the quite competent Ironsides here?
Yeah, assuming Tycoon has no issue with it, you'd be welcomed aboard.
And so what I want to do is, because of the strong hit with a match, I'm going to declare that we are not only making a connection here with Dash based on him having fixed Ironsides. I'm going to say that the first connection that we make, it's automatically going to be a strong hit. That's kind of the big thing we get from this. And of course, just the narrative benefit that Dash and Ironsides are going to be on board, and they'll have their own capabilities. So Ironsides is going to be kind of like folded into Dash, like he's just part of this same connection. I'm going to say this is a dangerous one, based on just their capabilities. Like they're pretty capable. I'm going to automatically give us the strong hit that we made this connection. So they have a roll and a rank. So we need to come up with a roll for him. So let's see. What does Dash do? What is he specifically best at? Why don't we say, like, I don't want it to be just like robotics, because then if he is so good at that, then why was it Emile who was able to really push him over the edge and get his work done? But honestly, I mean, if his life's work is making this artificial intelligence, because I think that Ironsides is indeed another example of he is more fully sentient. Like, this is a full-on, like, actual artificial intelligence. It's rudimentary, but Ironsides is more or less on the level of, like, Deuce. You know, like, actually a thinking, capable being. So it's got to be something in that area that Dash has his specialty in. We're going to say that it is indeed... We're just going to give it the blanket term of artificial intelligence. Like, anything that's in that zone, whether it's like the manipulation of artificial intelligence, the creation of it, understanding it, like anything in the realm of artificial intelligence, Dash is more of an expert in. So he gives a +1 there. And then I'd love Ironsides to also have specific capabilities, but I don't know if he's a full-on connection. Like, Emile doesn't have the relationship with him, so he doesn't give us like a +1 on anything. He would just be capable of certain things. And we would get the narrative benefit of him being there more than the connection benefit. Now, because this was a full double 6 match, I do want it to be a little bit stronger than that. I want to give myself another benefit. I'm not going to just also up that connection even more. That we're not going to double dip on that. But why don't we just tack on some free momentum back, as this helps really light some fires. We're sitting at a +1 right now. I think 1 or 2 momentum is warranted. I will be nice and say that it is a full additional +2 momentum. No, not that. I'm just going to say it's worth an additional 1 more momentum. And between all those things, that should pretty well represent our double 6 match on this secure an advantage. So now why don't we do the move that we were actually trying to set up, which is trying to undertake this expedition and actually get back in time. So we have this new plan. We're getting a +1 on this move. Dash and Ironsides are now aboard Raya's Promise with Emile. Everything was fine with Tycoon. Like, that's all good. They're all still in this together, and it seemed like a good idea to make sure there were extra hands there, just in case. So let's go ahead and make this edge move with a +1 as we undertake this expedition. Oh, we actually get another miss. That was not enough. The challenge dice decided they want to be really high again. We're looking at a 7 and a 9, and I could not get it together. My action die was not that wonderful. Do not mark progress and pay the price. I mean, I think the easiest thing would just be the siege continues. Like, we're making progress, but not meaningful stuff before there's like a big development in the siege. Like, I'm going to fill in one more box on that, one more quadrant of this 4 o'clock. We're going to say that, let's see, what does that represent? You know, I think if they got to 3 out of 4, they've like broken open the door. So it needs to be something before that. Like, they still haven't broken the door in, but why don't we say some significant sections of Cinder have been like, you know, the bombing overhead has dislodged a lot of stuff. There are a lot of injuries inside, like lots of some major rubble has come down, and I'm going to pull up our list of noteworthy Concord locations, and I'm going to randomly determine one of them that is just utterly destroyed. This, of course, includes the workshop that Emile has been making use of. So let's see, what do we have here? We have the junk pile, which is, we've certainly seen plenty of it, Magpie's establishment, where there's lots of salvage available to make all kinds of improvised stuff, which they've been doing. Like, a lot of people have been in the junk pile salvaging things and trying to make weapons for when the Imperium finally breaks through the door. So if that goes down, that's going to be a lot of deaths. A lot of people would die in that collapse. So it's the junk pile, the Locks Factory, which is where the really sub-zero temperature room where they keep the oxygen from the toxic atmosphere and store it and they store it into barrels and use it as part of their ventilation, everything. Like, a lot of just chemical stuff goes on in there. The Room of the Lost, that shrine room with all the cryopods, with people that are not dead yet. So that's 3. There's the Fixery, which is the workshop that Emile's been using with Firestarter. The Trenches, which is the best thing that they have for the medical bay. And then, because we have, to make it a nice full-on D6, our 6th thing, we did develop a new location that kind of matters a lot. Oh no, I have 7, so we're going to make this a weird D7. So the 6th location is the kitchen. No, we're going to make this a D8 because we have a few more locations I can think of. There's the kitchen, where they make the just like real food, but it's not as necessary anymore because they did fix up the like galley where they make food out of chaos energy. So there's the galley, and then for big D8, the room where Valkyrie is staying. So I'm going to roll a D8, and that's the order. So once again, 1 is the junk pile, 2 is the locks factory, 3 is the room of the lost, 4 is the fixery, 5 is the trenches, 6 is the kitchen, 7 is the galley, and 8 is Valkyrie's brig. And I have rolled a 1, which is the junk pile. So as I said, a lot of people were stationed in there working on trying to salvage what they could and turn that into weaponry. A lot of people have been sifting through the pile. It's a big room, so when it happened, definitely couldn't get a lot of people out of there. So we're going to have to ask the Oracle about like how many people just died. Because that was the big community effort now, was based on the junk pile, which is utterly buried in rubble now. All that junk, inaccessible. Many people killed, some instantly, some just buried alive, and there's not really any reasonable way to get to them in time, based on what they have. God, I feel like that answer went really dark, but it seems to be what the dice have provided. And we need to pay the price. So anyway, to full-on pay that price, we need to know, because the reports come in. You know, they're signaling out and they're begging for help. They're desperate to get the Beowulf to come back as quickly as they can. It's because there's been response, like there's been back and forth. The Beowulf has been like, we're on our way. And so the updates have been coming in. Perhaps this is also one that like, it's a bit of an old update, but these updates weren't all sent at the same time, but they're coming in when the SectorNet finally updated. They're kind of now finally seeing these all. So I think, oh God, you know, I was about to do the like, it's almost certain this many people died. It's likely this many people died. Honestly, I think that might be too depressing for me. I'm not going to do that level of granularity. I was going to, but I'm pivoting away. You know what? To highlight some of the safety tools of this game, we're setting a flag. When you identify situations or topics you don't want to include, don't want to envision in detail, or otherwise may need mindfulness when approaching, that content is now flagged. When you encounter content flagged as something to approach mindfully, pause to consider or discuss its role in your story. When you come across flagged content that you would rather adjust or omit, change your fate. And that's what we're doing. We're just going to reframe this a little bit. The same thing happens. We're just not going to go into the detail of it's exactly this many people that died. As long as we understand there were many casualties and deaths as a result of that roll. It's a hard hit. I think that once again, this has got to be a -1 to spirit. That's everybody that people can maybe endure or not. As this update goes around and everybody is understanding the reality of what's happened as a result of how long this has taken. Once again, Emile's going to try and endure stress here. We have 2 spirits still. We get another weak hit, so I could lose that 1 momentum we just got to get the 1 spirit back. No, once again, I feel like I don't want to take away the blow that was. It hits hard. We could afford the momentum, kind of, but I want it to be understood. This sucks. But again, people try and just keep it out of their mind. As like, I don't think this like stopped them from making a jump. You know, they've been jumping. They're just not making significant progress. You know, they're going from place to place, just not very noteworthy locations, and they just still have so far to go. But it comes time for them to jump again, and hopefully we can finally get something on our side here. But with the way the dice have been today, is there any other advantage I can secure for myself first? How can we get another +1 on this? Or I feel like I came up with the big idea. So let's just undertake the expedition. Okay. It's a miss again. I'm just glad it's not a miss with a match. My dice, like, I rolled a 1 on the action die and then a 4 and a 10 on the challenge dice. I almost got a weak hit, but not quite. Yeah, it just keeps going into a miss. Now, I'm not going to have the Siege of Concord advance this time. We had that twice in a row. I want to do something else, but I did have a different idea. This time, this is something that actually stops them from jumping. This is going to be a crisis. They don't arrive at a waypoint, but I think the Imperium has recognized that, their sector net is updated and everything. And the Imperium knows they have all of these ships on board, right? They all have their trackers with anti-tamper devices. I think the Imperium perhaps recognizes that there may be people in those ships and everything, and perhaps there's more than one way to set off the anti-tamper device. Maybe one way is tampering it, but if they can track those, maybe they can also send signals to them and artificially make all of these ships blast out those big things of electricity. And more than that, ordinarily these devices are just designed to shock the one person who is trying to tamper with the device and not cause collateral damage. But maybe if you're sending the device a signal, you can make it make a much bigger electrical burst. And that's what the Imperium does. They don't full-on self-destruct or anything, but I think with all of them working together, they make quite the electrical blast. And it shuts down all kinds of systems around. It harms various people. It probably kills numerous people on Newton's Folly and shuts down all kinds of systems as there's this big electrical blast. Same is true, but to a lesser extent on the Beowulf, because they don't have as many all in one place. Definitely any of the people from the Beowulf that are out piloting the ones in space, they just get fried. Those pilots are dead. So those five people are dead. Emile's ship gets a little bit of an electrical blast, but there's Raya's Promise gets a little bit of a blast from the inside, but it's small. They only have the one in there. But all of these ships go off at once, and it sends everybody into it's a crisis mode. All kinds of things are offline. Their communication, they can't talk to each other very well, so nobody really knows exactly what's going on. We'll say that the blast sets off a fire inside of Raya's Promise. Alarms are going off everywhere. The computer terminal is complaining about all these things, these warnings. It shuts down the jump in progress. Emile can't get in contact with the other ships at the moment. He can't get in touch with the other ships, which have their own big problems going on. As for how they're going to get these ships back in working order, and whether they're going to get there in time before Concord is just completely sieged, well, those are questions for next time. Highs and lows this time, man. Highs and lows. We had some great benefits that happened, but man, the dice do not want us to get back to Concord in time. Let me tell you, every time I see that come up like a miss when a big thing like that, I'm just like you. I don't want it to be the case. I have that moment of hesitation. I have that thought of I could just fake it. I could just pretend it said whatever I want. I can change the result. I really try to fight that urge. I believe that you set yourself up as best as possible and live by the dice, die by the dice. Interpret them in ways that make the most interesting story for yourself. I get to ultimately decide what a miss means. But boy, does it hurt every time that I'm I just want to get out of here and make any kind of progress. We got to get there. And it is just not doing this time. Maybe next time we'll have a little bit more luck on that. But, the misses, the weak hits, when things go awry, that's the real meat of the game. So for any of you out there who are playing your own ones that feel that same urge to rewrite rolls and pretend they didn't happen because it didn't go well, I urge you to second guess it and just roll with the bad thing. It's always up to you to throttle what the bad thing means. What does it mean to pay the price? But pay a price. Change the story. Give yourself a new problem to deal with. Maybe the dice will have your back the next time. But enough preaching. It's time for some prompts. This week, I'm going to roll an action and a theme for you, and I want you to tell me what animal it makes you think of. I had in mind a real-world animal, but it could be a sci-fi animal as well, I suppose. Tell me about what animal this action and theme makes you think of. All right, rolling them now. Evade and hate. What animal do you think of with the prompts evade and hate? Send me your ideas. As I said at the start of the episode, the best, most sure way to reach me is through starforgedpod@gmail.com. That's the one I'm likely to notice first, but you could well leave it as a comment as well. Either over on the Starforged Discord or on Spotify or YouTube. As I've said, those are kind of the two places where I might notice. But the most sure thing is that email, so starforgedpod@gmail.com. Oh, you know what? Before we go away, I do want to throw one more shout out. This is to no one particular person, but I have seen that there are many people that have been clearly, by the numbers, binging their way through these episodes. Just, you see, when they get through 5 episodes a day sometimes, or sometimes more, and it's clearly the same person. I just want to shout out to anybody who is listening to this now that is relatively new to the podcast and you've just caught up. I thank you. You know, seeing when people are just running through the back catalog as best as possible, it makes me feel like I've maybe got something that's worth it. So I see you and I thank you, and I want you to play me out, music.